My son humiliated me at his wedding, then his bride destroyed him fire. Backhand index pointing up smash like if you've ever been betrayed by family. Backhand index pointing up. The champagne flute exploded against the marble floor, crystal shards slicing through the silence of the country club ballroom like my son's words had just sliced through my heart. 200 wedding guests turned to stare at the woman in the cheap navy dress, me, standing frozen next to table 12 with tears streaming down my face, because I'd just heard my son Marcus tell Sarah's cousin exactly why his own mother was sitting next to the bathroom at his wedding reception. She's embarrassing, Aunt Rebecca. Mom doesn't fit with Sarah's crowd. This way she's hidden from the photos, and honestly, she'll probably leave early anyway. She's not really the party type. 26 years. 26 years of sacrifice, and I'd become his embarrassment. Broken heart comment, heartbroken, if this makes you want to cry. Broken heart, but you need to hear the whole story. Because what happened next will make you scream at your screen. 7 days before the wedding. Mom, we need to talk about Saturday. Marcus's voice through the phone had that careful tone, the same one he'd used at 7 years old when he'd accidentally shattered my grandmother's china plate while playing baseball in the house. I was in my tiny one-bedroom apartment, folding the same threadbare towels I'd been using for 8 years because every spare dollar went to Marcus. The rent was $847 a month. I knew because I counted every penny, every month, for 26 years. What about Saturday, sweetheart? I cradled the phone between my ear and shoulder, smoothing out one of his old Superman t-shirts that I'd kept as cleaning rags. Pathetic? Maybe. But when you raise a child completely alone, every scrap of their childhood becomes precious. The seating chart is complicated. My hands stilled. Complicated how? Sarah's family has people flying in from Connecticut. Her dad's business partners, her mom's sorority sisters. Really important people, Mom. The kind who could help my career. The kind who could help his career. Not the kind who'd worked 3 jobs to pay for that career. That's wonderful, honey. I can't wait to meet them. Silence. The kind of silence that makes your stomach drop. So we've put you at table 12. It's actually perfect, Mom, really close to everything. Table 12. I'd helped plan this wedding for 8 months, knew every detail down to the ivory napkin rings. Table 12 was in the back corner, hidden behind a marble pillar, 5 feet from the men's bathroom. Table 12 was where you put people you hoped would leave early. Face with steam from nose type, furious, if you're already mad at Marcus. Face with steam from nose, oh. The word came out smaller than I intended. That's fine, baby. You're the best, Mom. Oh, and one more thing. Sarah's family is pretty formal. Designer dresses, that kind of thing. So maybe wear something really nice. I know you always look great, but this is different. This is important. After we hung up, I sat on my second-hand couch, the same one I'd bought at a garage sale when Marcus was 15, and stared at my closet. Something really nice. The black dress I'd worn to his college graduation suddenly seemed shabby, wrong, not enough. 6 days before the wedding, I had exactly 43 minutes during my lunch break from Kroger to find a dress. 43 minutes between scanning groceries and rushing to my afternoon cleaning job at the office complex downtown. The Macy's sales associate was maybe 25, perfectly made up, wearing clothes that cost more than I made in a week. Mother of the groom, I explained, slightly out of breath. Country club wedding. What's your budget? I felt my cheeks burn. I was hoping to stay under $200. Her smile shifted almost imperceptibly. Not disappearing, but changing. Becoming professional instead of genuine. Let's see what we can find in our more affordable section. More affordable. The word stung like a slap. We found a navy blue dress with 3/4 sleeves. Simple, elegant, appropriate. The kind of dress that wouldn't embarrass anyone. This is very suitable, she said, which I later realized wasn't exactly a compliment. $179. More than my weekly grocery budget. More than I'd ever spent on myself at one time in my entire life. But I handed over my credit card, the one I'd sworn I'd only use for emergencies, because my son's wedding was an emergency of the heart. Money with wings react with broke if you've ever sacrificed like this for family. Money with wings. 5 days before the wedding. Linda. Diane wrapped me in a hug at her salon, the same place where I'd mopped floors every Tuesday and Thursday night during Marcus's senior year of high school. Wedding hair. How exciting. I'd splurged on getting my hair done, another $85 I couldn't afford but couldn't not spend. Because Marcus had said something really nice, and I'd never felt nice enough for his new life. Tell me everything about this wedding, Diane said, sectioning my graying brown hair with practiced efficiency. So I did. I told her about the country club, about Sarah's beautiful family, about how proud I was of Marcus. I didn't tell her about table 12. I didn't tell her about the careful distance in my son's voice lately, or how I hadn't been invited to the engagement party because it was just immediate family. Apparently, I wasn't immediate enough. You're going to look gorgeous, Diane said, adding highlights that caught the light like spun gold. That boy of yours is lucky to have you, lucky. If only he felt that way. 3 days before the wedding, Marcus called while I was getting ready for my evening shift at the diner. My third job. The one that paid for his car insurance. Hey mom, quick question. You're planning to come alone on Saturday, right? Of course, sweetheart. You know I'm not seeing anyone. I'd been single for 24 years. Not by choice, but by necessity. Who had time to date when you were working 60 hours a week to raise a child alone? Good. I mean, not good that you're alone. Just. Sarah's parents are really traditional. They might not understand about, I didn't know. About what, Marcus? About Dad leaving when I was little. About you never remarrying. They might think it's weird. Weird. My sacrifice was weird. My devotion was weird. My love was weird. I understand, I lied, because that's what mothers do. We lie to protect our children, even when they're hurting us. Crying face comment, heartbreaking, if you feel for Linda right now. Crying face. The wedding day, 6 a.m. I woke up at dawn, too nervous to sleep. This was my son's wedding day. The day I'd been dreaming about since he was born, when I'd imagined walking him down the aisle myself since his father wasn't there to do it. Except I wouldn't be walking him anywhere. David Chen had shown up in town 2 days ago with his current wife, a blonde woman barely older than Marcus, acting like 24 years of abandonment was just a minor inconvenience. I spent an hour getting ready, applying makeup with hands that shook from nerves or caffeine or heartbreak. In the mirror, I looked appropriate. Not beautiful, not stunning, but appropriate. The kind of mother who wouldn't embarrass anyone. The wedding day, 10 a.m. St. Matthew's Episcopal Church was breathtaking. All white roses and golden light streaming through stained glass windows that probably cost more than I made in a year. I'd never seen anything so beautiful. I arrived an hour early because I wanted everything to be perfect. This was my son's day, and I wasn't going to do anything to mess it up. The photographer was already there, a young man with equipment that looked more expensive than my car. He barely glanced at me as I made my way to what I thought was the appropriate seat, second row, groom's side. That's where mothers of the groom sit, right? I'd googled wedding etiquette at the public library because I didn't have internet at home. Couldn't afford it. But when Sarah's family began arriving, I realized my mistake immediately. Woman facepalming type, awkward, if you've ever been in the wrong place. Woman facepalming. These people moved differently than I did. They wore their wealth like cologne, subtle but unmistakable. Sarah's mother glided down the aisle in cream silk that probably cost more than my monthly rent, air kissing her way through the crowd like she was hosting a dinner party at the country club. Which, I suppose, she was. Excuse me. A tall man in a suit that screamed expensive tapped my shoulder. His smile was polite but firm. I think there might be some confusion. This section is reserved for immediate family. Heat flooded my cheeks. Oh, I'm Marcus's mother. Linda Chen. The man's face went through a series of expressions, surprise, confusion, something that might have been pity. Of course. I'm so sorry. I'm Richard, Sarah's uncle. It's so nice to finally meet you, finally meet me. As if I'd been hiding in a cave for the past year instead of helping plan every detail of this wedding. We've heard so much about you, his wife added, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. What had they heard? I wanted to ask, but Marcus suddenly appeared, looking devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo. My baby boy, all grown up, about to start his own family. Mom! He hugged me quickly, a brief, distracted squeeze before stepping back like I might wrinkle his perfectly pressed shirt. You look great. Thanks for coming. To my own son's wedding. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. I reached up to straighten his bow tie the way I had for every school dance, every graduation, every important moment of his 26 years. He stepped back, his hands moving to fix what I'd just touched. The photographer wants some shots of the wedding party before the ceremony. Should I? We'll catch up at the reception, okay? I really need to focus right now. I watched him walk away. Watched him gather with Sarah's family and his groomsmen for photos that would hang in their home for decades. Beautiful, smiling people celebrating a beautiful, happy moment. I wasn't in any of them. Pensive face react, excluded, if you've ever felt left out by your own family. Pensive face. But little did I know, the ceremony was just the beginning. The real humiliation was waiting for me at the reception. The reception, 6 p.m. The country club took my breath away. Crystal chandeliers that caught the light like diamonds. White roses and peonies everywhere, flowers I'd helped choose during those planning sessions when Sarah and I had bonded over cake tastings and color schemes. Or so I'd thought. A dance floor that gleamed like a mirror reflected the sunset streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. I'd never been anywhere so elegant, so perfect, so far beyond anything I could ever afford. I found table 12 exactly where I'd expected, tucked in the back corner, partially hidden behind a marble pillar, close enough to the bathroom that I could hear every toilet flush, every hand dryer, every whispered conversation about how someone's dress was too tight or their date was too boring. This was my view of my son's wedding reception. Already seated were Helen and Frank, an elderly couple who took one look at my navy dress and made their assumptions. "You must be with the bride's family," Helen said, her tone suggesting this was more question than statement. "Actually, I'm the groom's mother." The silence stretched so long I thought maybe they'd both had simultaneous strokes. Helen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Frank suddenly became very interested in the floral centerpiece. "Oh," Helen finally managed. "That's how interesting." Face with rolling eyes comment, rude, if Helen's reaction makes you mad. Face with rolling eyes. The other seats at table 12 filled with people I didn't recognize, business associates of Sarah's father, it turned out. People who'd been invited out of obligation rather than affection. They made polite conversation among themselves while I sat quietly, invisibly, watching my son's new life unfold from the worst seats in the house. The cocktail hour was pure torture. I stood alone near the bar, nursing a single glass of wine because I couldn't afford to order another, watching Marcus and Sarah work the room like they were born to it. And Marcus. God, Marcus was in his element. He laughed at the right jokes, shook the right hands, played the part of the successful young husband with an ease that took my breath away. This was the life he wanted. This was the world he'd chosen, a world that apparently had no place for the woman who'd made it all possible. He walked past me 4 times during that cocktail hour. 4 times. Never stopping, never pausing, never even making eye contact. Like I was part of the furniture. Pouting face type, invisible, if you've ever been ignored by someone you love. Pouting face. Linda. Sarah's voice cut through the crowd like a lifeline. She approached with a radiant smile, every inch the perfect bride. "You look absolutely beautiful. How are you enjoying everything?" "It's magical, sweetheart. Truly magical. I'm so glad you're here. Marcus is so lucky to have you." She squeezed my hand, and for just a moment, I felt like I belonged. "I need to go greet some relatives who just arrived, but let's catch up properly later, okay?" Later. The word every mother learns to dread. Later never comes when you're sitting at table 12. By the time dinner was served, I'd been standing alone for an hour and 47 minutes. I knew because I'd been watching the ornate clock above the bar, counting down the minutes until I could politely escape. But dinner brought a new kind of torture, the comments from nearby tables that weren't quite whispered enough. "Is that really his mother?" The voice came from table 8, where Sarah's sorority sisters were holding court. "She seems so different from what I expected," another replied. "I mean, look at Sarah's mother. So elegant, so put together, so expensive," they meant. "So worthy." The main course brought more pointed observations from table 7, where Sarah's business school friends were analyzing everything like a case study. "The catering alone must have cost 60 grand, someone whispered. "Did you see the ice sculpture? The open bar? The live band? If they only knew who'd actually paid for it all. Sarah's parents must be dropping serious money on this," another voice added. "I heard they rented out the entire club for the weekend." I wanted to laugh. Or cry. Or stand up and scream the truth. But I sat quietly, cutting my chicken into smaller and smaller pieces, trying to make myself as invisible as they all clearly wished I was. Money bag react, expensive, if you're starting to suspect something. Money bag. The dessert course was when everything began to unravel. Who invited her looking like that? The voice belonged to Sarah's cousin Jennifer, a woman in her 30s wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. She wasn't even trying to whisper anymore. I mean, couldn't someone have taken her shopping? This is embarrassing. Her tablemate, equally well-dressed and equally thoughtless, made a soft sound of agreement. I heard she works at a grocery store or something. 3 jobs, can you imagine? How absolutely exhausting, how absolutely exhausting. As if my life was a curiosity rather than a necessity. As if working 3 jobs was some kind of lifestyle choice rather than what I'd had to do to keep Marcus fed, clothed, housed, and educated for 26 years. I don't understand why Marcus didn't just handle this better, Jennifer continued, warming to her theme. I mean, there are ways to manage these situations. My cousin had the same problem at her wedding, embarrassing relatives. They just seated them appropriately and made sure they weren't in any of the important photos. Seated them appropriately. Like me. Like I was the embarrassing relative who needed to be managed. That's when I felt something inside me crack. Not break, not yet, but crack. Like ice on a pond in early spring, still holding but showing the first signs of inevitable collapse. I excused myself to the bathroom, the one conveniently located 5 feet from my assigned seat, and locked myself in the furthest stall. For exactly 3 minutes, I let myself cry. Really cry. The kind of soul-deep sobbing I'd done alone in my car after dropping Marcus off at college, or late at night when the bills piled higher than my paycheck, or during those long, lonely years when I'd wondered if I was enough for him. Apparently, I wasn't. Loudly crying face comment, crying, if you're tearing up right now. Loudly crying face. When I emerged from the stall, I caught sight of myself in the ornate bathroom mirror. The woman staring back at me was 52 years old, tired, and trying desperately to fit into a world that didn't want her. But she was also the woman who'd raised an incredible man. The woman who'd worked 16-hour days so Marcus could play Little League. The woman who'd eaten peanut butter sandwiches for dinner so Marcus could have new clothes for school pictures. The woman who'd given up dating, traveling, dreaming, living, also her son could have every opportunity. I reapplied my lipstick with shaking hands, straightened my shoulders, and returned to table 12. The toasts had begun while I was gone. Sarah's father stood at the head table, commanding attention with the ease of a man who'd never doubted his place in the world. When Sarah told us she'd found the love of her life, he began, his voice carrying easily across the room, we knew we were gaining not just a son-in-law, but a whole new family member. A whole new family member. Singular. As if I didn't exist. He spoke eloquently about Marcus's achievements, his bright future, his obvious devotion to Sarah. Every achievement mentioned was one I'd funded. Every opportunity discussed was one I'd sacrificed to provide. But no one mentioned me. Marcus's best man from college told hilarious stories about their spring break trips, their graduate school adventures, their dreams and plans for the future. Every story cost money I'd provided. Every adventure was possible because I'd worked overtime, taken extra shifts, said no to every personal pleasure so Marcus could say yes to everything he wanted. Sarah's maid of honor gushed about Sarah's independence and strength. She's shown all of us what it means to be a strong, successful woman who goes after what she wants in life. I nearly choked on my wine. Sarah was lovely, truly. But she was also 24 years old with a trust fund, parents who'd paid for her education, and a family who'd never made her choose between paying the electric bill and buying groceries. She'd never cleaned offices at 2 a.m. or worked doubles at a diner or chosen mac and cheese for dinner 5 nights in a row because it was all she could afford. Not that any of that was her fault. But listening to toast after toast about independence and strength while sitting forgotten at table 12 felt like being slowly poisoned. Nauseated face type, sick, if this hypocrisy is making you nauseous. Nauseated face. The evening dragged on like a beautiful, expensive nightmare. Family photos were taken, without me. I watched from my corner table as they posed and laughed, as the photographer captured their joy for posterity. When I'd asked Marcus about family photos weeks ago, he'd said, "We'll figure it out on the day, Mom." Apparently, they had figured it out, I wasn't in them. The bouquet toss happened. I wasn't invited to gather with the single women, despite being the most single person in the room. The garter toss occurred. I watched from my seat by the bathroom, invisible and forgotten. Around 10 o'clock, I seriously considered leaving. Helen and Frank had already gone home, claiming early bedtimes. The business associates were deep in shop talk about quarterly projections and market trends. No one would notice if I slipped out the back. But then I looked at Marcus, dancing with his beautiful wife, and I couldn't do it. This was my son's wedding day. I'd waited 26 years for this moment, sacrificed everything for this moment. I wasn't going to let his shame drive me away, so I stayed. I smiled when people made awkward small talk. I applauded at appropriate moments. I pretended my heart wasn't shattering into smaller and smaller pieces with every minute that passed. That's when Sarah's mother, Patricia, approached the microphone with the confidence of a woman who'd never been seated at table 12 in her life. "I just want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate this absolutely perfect day," she began, her cultured voice carrying effortlessly across the room. "Our families have truly become one today, and Richard and I couldn't be happier. Our families." As if I was part of some grand unification rather than the woman who'd been hidden away like a dirty secret. "Sarah and Marcus are going to have such a wonderful life together," Patricia continued, gesturing toward the head table where my son sat with his new in-laws. "They're both so accomplished, so well-matched, so perfectly suited for each other. We couldn't have asked for a better addition to our family." Addition to their family. Not the woman who'd created the family Marcus came from. I felt that crack in my heart widen. Just a little. Just enough to let the first drops of something cold and bitter seep through. Patricia handed the microphone to someone else, and I thought the torture was finally over. I could smile through the cake cutting, maybe sneak out during the dancing, go home to my empty apartment and pretend this night had never happened. But then Sarah stood up. She took the microphone from whoever had been speaking, her wedding dress catching the light from the chandeliers, making her look like something from a fairy tale. Which, I suppose, she was. The princess who'd gotten everything she wanted. "Before we cut the cake," she said, her voice clear and strong, carrying easily across the now quiet room, "I want to take a moment to thank someone very, very special." I settled back in my chair, expecting another tribute to her parents, maybe her grandmother who'd flown in from Arizona, or her bridesmaids who'd stood by her through the planning process. The room quieted completely, conversation dying away as people turned their attention to the radiant bride. But something in Sarah's tone made me sit up straighter. Something in the way she was holding the microphone, like it was a weapon instead of a wedding accessory. "I want to thank someone who made this entire evening possible," Sarah continued, and I swear I could hear a pin drop in that ballroom. "Someone who has sacrificed more than anyone in this room could possibly imagine. Someone who worked not one, not two, but 3 jobs for 26 years to make sure the man I married had every single opportunity life could offer." My heart started beating so fast I thought I might pass out. Surely she wasn't talking about, "I want to thank the woman who paid for this entire wedding." The words hit the room like a bomb. Bomb, smash that like button if your jaw just dropped. Bomb. Every single flower you've admired tonight. Every piece of cake you're about to eat. Every glass of champagne you've been enjoying. The band, the photographer, the venue rental, the linens, the centerpieces, all of it paid for by one person. The silence was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. The woman who never asked for recognition. Never asked for thanks. Never asked for anything except to see her son happy on his wedding day. People were starting to look around now, confused, trying to figure out who she was talking about. Surely not. "I want to thank Marcus's mother." And then she pointed directly at me. "Linda Chen." The room went dead silent. Every single head in that ballroom turned toward table 12. Toward me, sitting there in my $179 navy dress next to the bathroom, next to the kitchen doors, in the corner where mothers of the groom apparently belonged when they weren't wealthy enough to matter. Marcus had gone completely, utterly white. Even from across the room, I could see the exact moment the blood drained from his face as he realized what Sarah was doing. As he understood that his carefully constructed evening, his perfect wedding to his perfect bride surrounded by perfect people, was about to explode. His father David looked like someone had slapped him with a frozen fish. Sarah's parents sat frozen at the head table, their champagne glasses suspended halfway to their lips, their faces masks of shock and something that looked an awful lot like horror. Jennifer, the cousin who'd been so concerned about my fashion choices, was staring at me with her mouth literally hanging open. The business associates at my table were suddenly extremely interested in their dessert plates, probably calculating exactly how much money the grocery store clerk had just spent on their entertainment. But Sarah wasn't finished. "Fire comment, fire, if you're loving Sarah right now. Fire." "Linda didn't just pay for tonight," Sarah continued, her voice getting stronger, more passionate with every word. "She paid for Marcus's entire life. His Little League equipment when he was 8. His band instruments in middle school. His car in high school. His college tuition. His graduate school expenses. His apartment during job interviews." I felt like I was going to faint. This wasn't supposed to happen. I was supposed to be invisible, appropriately grateful, quietly proud from my corner table. I wasn't supposed to be the center of attention at my son's wedding. She worked 16-hour days for 26 years, Sarah's voice carried across the silent ballroom like a battle cry. She cleaned offices at night so she could attend Marcus's school events during the day. She took on extra shifts every time he needed something. She never took a vacation, never bought herself anything nice, never even went on a date because she was too busy making sure her son had everything he needed to succeed. A woman at table 3 started crying. Actually crying, tears streaming down her face as she stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. And when Marcus told me his mother would understand being seated at table 12 because she wouldn't want to make a fuss, Sarah continued, and now her voice was getting louder, angrier, I realized that the most important person at this wedding was being treated like she was the least important. Marcus reached for the microphone, his face a mask of panic. Sarah, please, you're embarrassing. She stepped away from him, pulling the microphone out of his reach. I'm embarrassing who, Marcus? Your mother. The woman who sacrificed everything for you. The question hung in the air like smoke. Face screaming in fear, react, shocked, if you can't believe what's happening. Face screaming in fear. That's when I realized something that made my blood turn to ice water in my veins. My son wasn't panicking because Sarah was wrong. He was panicking because she was right. And everyone in that room now knew exactly what kind of man I'd raised. Skull, but wait. This is just the beginning. Skull, what happens next will leave you speechless. Linda is about to do something that will change everything forever. The silence in that ballroom stretched so long I thought time itself had stopped. 200 wedding guests staring at me, Linda Chen, the woman in a cheap navy dress sitting at table 12, while my son's face went from white to green to something that looked like he might actually throw up right there at the head table. But Sarah wasn't done. Oh no. My new daughter-in-law was just getting started. Linda, she said, still holding that microphone like a weapon, would you please stand up? Collision comment, stand up Linda, if you want her to rise. Collision. Every instinct I had screamed at me to stay seated. To let this moment pass. To disappear into the wallpaper like I'd been doing my entire life. 26 years of making myself smaller, quieter, less inconvenient for everyone around me. But something in Sarah's voice, a strength I recognized because I'd had to find it myself so many times, made me push back that chair. My legs shook as I stood. The navy dress that had seemed so appropriate this morning now felt like armor. Like I was finally ready for a battle I'd been avoiding my whole life. This woman, Sarah continued, and now her voice was carrying across that silent ballroom like thunder, works 60 hours a week. She has worked 60 hours a week for 26 years straight. She sold her car to pay for Marcus's college textbooks. She took out a second mortgage on her house that she's still paying for, to cover his graduate school tuition. I heard someone gasp. Actually gasp. Like they couldn't believe what they were hearing. Marcus lunged for the microphone again. Sarah, stop. Please. You're making this what, Marcus? She whirled around to face him, her wedding dress spinning like she was some avenging angel. True. Honest? Fair. He flinched like she'd slapped him. You want to know what your son told me when I asked why his mother was sitting at table 12? Sarah turned back to the crowd, and I swear you could have heard a heartbeat in that silence. Face with steam from nose type, tell us, if you're ready for the truth. Face with steam from nose. He said it was because my family needed the good seats for the photos. He said his mother would understand. He said she wouldn't want to make a fuss. A woman at table 5 started crying openly now. Not just tears, actual sobs that echoed off the marble walls. And you know what Linda told me when I asked her why she was paying for everything? Sarah's voice was getting stronger, more passionate. She said, I just want my son to have the perfect day. I want him to start his marriage without any debt, without any stress. I want to give him this gift. That's when Marcus's father, David, the man who'd abandoned us when Marcus was 2, finally found his voice. Now see here, young lady, he started to stand up, his face purple with indignation. Sarah turned on him like a lioness. Sit down. And to my absolute shock, he did. You, she pointed at David like he was something she'd scraped off her shoe, have absolutely no right to speak. You abandoned your family 24 years ago and showed up here tonight with your trophy wife like you deserve some kind of recognition. David's current wife, a blonde woman who couldn't be older than 30, shrank down in her chair like she was trying to disappear. Well, here's some news for you, Sarah continued, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. The woman who raised your son, who did your job and hers both, who never missed a single baseball game or parent-teacher conference or birthday party. She deserves every bit of honor and recognition. Not you. Clapping hands smash like if Sarah is your new hero. Clapping hands. The whispers started then, rippling through the crowd like wildfire. She paid for everything. The whole wedding. But she's sitting at table 12. Oh my God, we've been. Sarah held up her hand, and somehow, impossibly, the whispers died. I want everyone in this room to understand something, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of that ballroom. You've been whispering about Linda all evening. About her dress, about her job, about whether she belongs here. I felt heat flood my cheeks. They had been whispering. I'd heard every cruel word. Well, let me tell you who Linda Chen really is, Sarah continued. She's the woman who worked 3 jobs, so Marcus could play Little League. She cleaned offices at night, worked retail during the day, and served tables on weekends. For 26 years. The silence was deafening now. She never took a vacation because every spare dollar went to Marcus's future. She drove a 15-year-old car with a broken air conditioner through 3 Texas summers because fixing it would have meant Marcus couldn't go to band camp. I was crying now. I couldn't help it. Someone was finally telling my story. Someone was finally seeing me. She ate peanut butter sandwiches for dinner 5 nights a week during Marcus's senior year of high school so he could have new clothes for college interviews. Sarah's voice cracked slightly, but she kept going. And when Marcus got engaged and wanted the perfect wedding, Linda didn't hesitate. She took out loans. She worked overtime. She sacrificed everything, one more time, because that's what mothers do. Loudly crying face comment, crying, if you're sobbing right now. Loudly crying face. Then Sarah did something that made my heart stop. She walked down from the head table, across that dance floor, through 200 stunned wedding guests, and stopped right in front of me. She handed me the microphone. I think, she said loud enough for everyone to hear, it's time Linda spoke for herself. I looked at that microphone like it was a snake. I'd never spoken publicly in my life. Never demanded attention. Never made a scene. Good mothers didn't make scenes. But as I looked around that room, at all those people in their expensive clothes who'd been judging me all evening, I realized something. I was tired of being good. I took the microphone with hands that had stopped shaking. Because for the first time in 26 years, I wasn't afraid anymore. I want everyone to know, I said, and my voice was clearer than I'd expected, that I don't regret a single sacrifice I made for my son. Marcus flinched like I'd hit him. I don't regret the jobs or the overtime or the years of eating nothing but ramen noodles so Marcus could have everything he needed. I don't regret selling my grandmother's wedding ring to pay for his SAT prep courses. I don't regret taking out loans I'm still paying back to fund his education. The room was so quiet I could hear the ice melting in water glasses. I don't even regret paying for this wedding. Every flower, every candle, every piece of cake, every glass of champagne, I paid for it all, and I'm not sorry. I looked directly at my son then, at this man I'd raised and loved and sacrificed everything for. But I am sorry about one thing, Marcus. He was crying now too, tears streaming down his face as he realized what was coming. I'm sorry that somehow, despite everything I tried to teach you, you grew up to be the kind of man who would be ashamed of his mother. Broken heart react, heartbroken, if this is destroying you. Broken heart. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that couldn't be put out. I'm sorry that you became the kind of person who would seat the woman who raised you next to the bathroom so your new in-laws wouldn't have to look at her. Marcus stood up then, his chair scraping against the marble floor. Mom, please. I can explain. No. The word came out harder than I'd intended. I've heard enough explanations, Marcus. I've spent 26 years listening to explanations for why I wasn't good enough, pretty enough, successful enough, sophisticated enough. I gestured around the room, at all these people who'd been whispering about me. You want to know what I heard tonight? I heard your cousin say I was embarrassing. I heard your new relatives wonder who invited me looking like that. I heard people question whether I belonged at my own son's wedding. Jennifer, Sarah's cousin, had gone completely white. She was staring at her plate like it might save her from this moment. And you know what the worst part is? I continued, my voice getting stronger with every word. You didn't defend me. Not once. When people were being cruel, when they were making jokes, when they were treating me like I was some kind of charity case, you said nothing. Marcus was sobbing now, his perfect composure completely shattered. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean. Yes, you did, I said, and the truth of it hit both of us like a physical blow. You meant every bit of it. You've been ashamed of me for years, Marcus. I've seen it in the way you don't invite me to things. The way you introduce me last at parties, hoping people won't notice. The way you never talk about your childhood or how you grew up. Sarah was crying now too, but she was also smiling through her tears like she was proud of me. Like she'd been waiting for this moment as much as I had. I raised you to be kind, I continued. I raised you to be grateful. I raised you to remember where you came from and to never, ever be ashamed of the people who love you. I looked around the room one more time, at all these wealthy, elegant people who'd made me feel so small. I may work at a grocery store, but I'm not ashamed of that. I may clean offices at night, but that's honest work. I may not have a college degree or wear designer clothes or drive a fancy car, but I raised a successful man entirely on my own. The applause started slowly. One person clapping. Then another. Then suddenly the entire room was on their feet, applauding like I'd just given the performance of a lifetime. Which, I suppose, I had. Clapping hands comment, standing ovation, if you're clapping too. Clapping hands. But I wasn't done yet. Because there was one more thing that needed to be said. There's something else you all should know, I said, waiting for the applause to die down. Something that might change how you feel about this whole situation. The room went quiet again, everyone leaning forward to catch my next words. I didn't just pay for this wedding out of love for my son, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent ballroom. I paid for it because 3 months ago, I won the lottery. The gasp that went up from the crowd was audible. $67 million, I continued, enjoying the shocked expressions on every face in that room. After taxes, I took home about $40 million. Marcus's jaw literally dropped. He was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. I could have told Marcus. I could have quit my jobs, bought a mansion, started living like the wealthy woman I suddenly was. But I wanted to see what kind of man I'd raised. I wanted to see if success and his new social circle had changed him. The silence was deafening. I wanted to see if he would still love his mother when she wasn't convenient. When she didn't fit into his perfect new life. I looked directly at Marcus, at this stranger wearing my son's face. Well, now I know. Exploding head type, plot twist, if your mind is blown. Exploding head. Sarah was staring at me with her mouth open. Even she hadn't known about the lottery win. So here's what's going to happen, I continued, still holding that microphone like it was the most powerful thing in the world. I'm going to finish my speech, and then I'm going to leave. And Marcus, sweetheart, you're going to have to figure out how to pay me back for this wedding. His face went from shocked to terrified in about 2 seconds. All of it, I continued. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the band, the photographer. Every single penny. Because I've decided that my money, my lottery money, is going to go to people who actually deserve it. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my purse. I'd been carrying it around for weeks, waiting for the right moment. I've already written checks to several charities. Organizations that help single mothers, that provide scholarships for kids who can't afford college, that support working families who are struggling to make ends meet. The room was so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. People like the woman I used to be. People who work 3 jobs and eat peanut butter sandwiches and sacrifice everything for the people they love. I looked around the room one more time, at all these people who judged me, dismissed me, treated me like I was less than nothing. And as for the rest of my money, well, let's just say I've decided to start living for myself for the first time in 26 years. I handed the microphone back to Sarah, who was still staring at me like I'd just performed actual magic. Thank you all for a very educational evening, I said, my voice carrying clearly without amplification. I've learned exactly who my son really is. And more importantly, I've learned exactly who I am. I picked up my purse from table 12, that horrible, humiliating table that had somehow become the launch pad for my liberation. Congratulations on your marriage, Marcus and Sarah. I hope you'll be very happy together. I started walking toward the exit, my head held high for the first time all evening. Woman walking comment, walk away queen, if you're cheering for Linda. Woman walking. But I wasn't quite finished yet. I stopped at the edge of the dance floor and turned back to address the room one last time. Oh, and Marcus. You might want to start looking for a new apartment. The house you're living in. The one I've been paying the mortgage on. I'm selling it next week. The collective gasp from the crowd was even louder this time. After all, I continued with a smile that felt foreign on my face, I can afford something much nicer now. I was almost to the door when I heard running footsteps behind me. Linda. Linda, wait. I turned to see Sarah rushing after me, her wedding dress bunched up in her fists so she could run, her face streaked with tears and mascara. I'm so sorry, she gasped when she reached me. I had no idea about the lottery, but that doesn't matter. You shouldn't have been treated like that. Not tonight, not ever. I studied her face, this young woman who just destroyed her own wedding reception to defend me. Why did you do it? I asked. Why did you tell everyone the truth? Sarah wiped her eyes, smearing her makeup even more. Because 3 months ago, Marcus told me something that made me realize what kind of man I was marrying. I waited. He said he was embarrassed by you. He said you didn't fit with our crowd, and that he wished you were more like my mother. More sophisticated, more appropriate. The words hit me like physical blows. I told him that you were the most incredible woman I'd ever met, and that if he couldn't see that, he didn't deserve you as a mother. Sarah took a shaky breath. And tonight, when I saw you sitting at that table, being treated like you were nothing when you were everything, I couldn't stand it anymore. Loudly crying face react, sobbing, if Sarah is making you cry. Loudly crying face. What about your marriage? I asked. What about Marcus? You just humiliated him in front of 200 people. Sarah smiled through her tears. Linda, a man who would be ashamed of a mother like you isn't a man I want to be married to. She reached into her bouquet and pulled out a single white rose, handing it to me. Thank you, she said simply. For raising a son who was capable of love, even if he forgot how to show it. And thank you for teaching me that sometimes, standing up for what's right is more important than keeping the peace. I hugged her then, this brave young woman who'd chosen truth over comfort, justice over convenience. What will you do now? I asked. I don't know, she admitted. But I know I'll figure it out. Strong women always do. As I walked to my 15-year-old car, the last time I'd ever drive that beaten-up Honda, I realized something that made me laugh out loud in the country club parking lot. For 52 years, I'd been trying to make myself small enough, quiet enough, convenient enough for other people. Tonight, I'd finally learned how to take up space. Flex biceps comment, empowered, if Linda is your inspiration. Flex biceps. My phone started ringing before I even got home. Marcus, calling over and over. Then David. Then numbers I didn't recognize, probably other wedding guests who suddenly wanted to talk to the lottery winner they'd been ignoring all evening. I let them all ring. For the first time in my son's life, I was going to let him wait. I was going to let him wonder. I was going to let him experience what it felt like to need someone who might not be available. Some conversations, I realized, needed to happen when both people were ready to be completely honest. And for the first time in 26 years, I was going to make someone else get ready on my timeline. The next morning, I woke up in my tiny apartment and made myself the most expensive cup of coffee I could afford. Then I sat down at my computer and did something I'd been thinking about for 3 months. I transferred $5 million to a scholarship fund for children of single mothers. Then I bought myself a first-class ticket to Paris. I'd always wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. Gemstone the end. Or is it? Gemstone. Fire smash that like button if Linda's transformation gave you chills. Speech balloon comment your thoughts. Did Marcus deserve this? Was Linda too harsh? What would you have done? Bell subscribe for more incredible true stories that will change how you see the world. Mobile phones share this with every strong woman who needs to hear Linda's story.